What's happening, everybody? Sam here, Real Res Talk. Welcome back to the channel. By myself tonight. Lads are busy. Nick's doing a bit of work for some other things. So, yeah, just a little quick news show, a little bit of an AMA. So, if you've got any questions, then stick them in the chat. That is me. Let me just mute that because I can hear myself playing back, which is not nice. Yeah, so if you've got any questions, chuck them in the chat. I'll get to them. Anything you want, really. Football related, non-football related. We can. It's a bit loose tonight, and it's a bit more sort of freeing, rather than it be sort of structured and set times for everything. So yeah, let's have a gander then. First big news thing on the docket was for Mike McGrath, who I believe works for the Daily Telegraph. Yeah, Daily Telegraph. So he's spoken about Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos are going to focus on youth this coming summer rather than spend upwards of, I think it was 175 million, 165 million last year. We're not going to get anywhere near that, apparently, according to this report. So I'll just read out the article and then we sort of get into it. So Jim Ratcliffe will demand Manchester United's manager, so still not confirming whether Ten Hag is going to be there or not, to prepare for next season within tight profit sustainability rules, PSR, in a severe end to extravagant net spending. Ratcliffe and his Ineos team are currently reviewing the position of Eric Ten Hag, and whoever's in charge is likely to be working under a budget far cry from 175 million spent on players last summer, with emphasis on youth brought into the first team squad. So we're going to touch on those youth players as well, like just so... Sorry, just moving windows, just so we're aware of like what's going on with the youth and who they're talking about. So yeah, what do we think of that? Happy with that news? Were we looking forward to a big spend summer with the new owners and stuff like that? I know we were skirting right under the FFP and right under the sustainability rules for the last year or so, and I think they've done their best to try and move us further away from that. The sales of like Alvaro Fernandez, Zidane Iqbal, all that sort of stuff. Young players going out the door, which is pure profit, to help with that sort of FRP, PSR, FFP, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, the article continues and identifies a couple of players who they think in the youth team that would be potential breaking through to the first team and could be potential players that they would look at. So, Manchester United regard Toby Collier, who is a young midfielder who I don't think we've seen him. He's been on the bench a couple of times, but I don't think he's got any minutes as far as I remember. Harry Amas is also highly thought of at Manchester United. This is the kid I want to look out for. He's apparently like a Luke Shaw regen, like he's Luke Shaw's heir to the throne, essentially. Left back, very, very highly thought of and rated. I think he's just 16 as well, so he's already playing like above where he should be. So he's really exciting talent to watch out for. With net spending limited, young players coming through will be an important way Manchester United function going forward. So United's always been about the academy players and always been about the youth since I think we've had an academy graduate in the squad since 1926, I believe, and we've not broken out. Every matchday squad there's had an academy graduate in. So it's a history we're very proud of. You've obviously had the Busby Babes, Class of 92, Fergie's Fledglings. We've built all our most successful teams around youth players and players from our academy and players that we've scouted from across not just the UK but across the world. If you look at like Garnacho, Ronaldo, I think it's good that they're sticking to that United DNA and they're sticking to that. We're not gonna do what Newcastle do or what City do, where we just fork out money for the best players available and then turn them into things. I think we should stick with the youth players. So we've already seen it with the likes of this. Something like obviously Kobbie Mainoo's come through and he's been phenomenally good, like unbelievably good. But me and Nick are going to do a show on the youth talent who's going to come through next season, who we would identify as like being the next breakout, the next Kobbie Mainoo. As you've had Garnacho, obviously, who's played, I think it's close to like 40 games just this past season. So he is obviously being primed for like the next big thing. I don't know if he stays at United as long as Kobbie Mainoo does, but while he's here, definitely take use of him. Amad Diallo, another one, paid decent chunk of change for him. I think it was like 35, 40 million euros. Has been out on loan a couple of times, but the impact he's had in this squad with the amount of minutes that he's had, like really small amount of minutes, he's been a phenomenal player and a really big sort of impact on the squad. Important goals for Liverpool again in the FA Cup. So yeah, he's an exciting prospect as well if he does stay at the club this summer. You've got Rasmus Højlund as well. Again, paid out a lot of money, but I think there's potential there. He's super quick, rapid, can finish. I was listening to Howson earlier today, and they were saying, I think Højlund has had 38 shots this season. Harry Kane's had 128. And if you work out the conversion rate of how many shots versus how many goals they've scored, Højlund's actually got a better conversion rate with less shots. So there's potential there. He's a great finisher, really quick. And I think if we fed him more during the games, which is on the rest of his teammates, I think the likes of Amad Diallo is really good at that. He's a good linking up with people. So I think we've got a good core of players there who could potentially be massive for us in the next 5, 10, even 15 years, depending on how long they stay and how fit they are. And I think you could build around that and bring in a couple of sprinkle of experienced squads, experienced players, and then a couple of players who are about to hit their peak and about to be on the rise. So I think there's a story later about their age profile that we're looking at, so we'll get into that as well later. Let me just find that other one. So I've got my notes on 2 different pages, which doesn't help me at all. Yeah, let me just scroll down. Right, so let's move on to the transfers. So the actual transfers that we're looking at, there's been quite a few names that we're looking at in terms of players we'll actually go out and buy rather than the sort of youth talent that's coming through. So I'm going to go through those names, and a couple of the sources are, one of them's Looker, so take it as you want. I'll read some comments out, actually. I've just seen some comments in the chat. Dan Errington, so does that mean he's looking at as light as possible next 2 windows, then go out for next year? It's possible, man. Like, we need to abide by these FFP and SR fucking rules as well. So yeah, it's interesting to see what happens. I know they're changing the rules now because this SRP and this FFP thing has not quite worked how they wanted it to work, and it's actually hindered a lot of clubs. So I think they're trying to change the sort of structure of it, but we'll see. Richard Hawkins, I'm happy that we're building our youth, but we need to do transfer to supplement the team. I agree. Yeah, we've always had academy players in the squad, and I think we got Harry Amas from Wolves. I believe so. Rashad JD92, I chose Mainu, but I feel like the team should build around Mainu and Garnacho. I agree, mate. Yeah, there's a poll in the chat. Who was the standout youth player this season? The options are Mainu, Garnacho, Ahmad, and Højlund. So if you stick in there and vote for your favourite, so far it's an absolute clean sweep for Kobbie Mainu, which is fair enough. Absolutely phenomenal this season. So yeah, stick that. Or if you've got another shout, Camboala maybe, stick it in the chat. Let me know. So yeah, Lowcurst has been talking about possible United transfers this summer. Let me just find where we're at. Manchester United are confident they can sign Michael Elise and Jared Branthwaite this summer. Crystal Palace want at least 60 million for Michael Elise, while Branthwaite could be available as little as 40 due to Everton's ongoing financial issues. That was then counteracted by Luckhurst. So he agreed with the same 2 players. However, he said Everton will hold out for a hefty fee for Branthwaite. They will not sell Branthwaite for a cut price fee and value it between 70 and 80 million pounds. Figures that Everton can see the club may have to sell players this summer, but will only do so if their valuation is met. So 2 conflicting journalists there. Depends, like, they're both not reliable. Luckhurst and Talksport is not exactly the bastion of journalism. It's not the Athletic or Ornstein, is it? So take what you want from the valuations there, but we've heard Branthwaite quite a lot this season, and I like him. I do. I think he's raw. He's got some talent. The big lad, absolute unit. I think he could have something there, but £70 million is a risk on a young English centre back from Everton. Like, it's a definite risk, and if you're going to take a risk, you need the price to be right. And I don't think £70 million is the right price for a risk. Like, if he was showing absolute sort of undeniable talent, like a Kobbie Mainu, like a trying to think, like a Garnacho, I think then yeah, you take the risk. But 70 million, it's just not a price I can get behind, I'm afraid. And then with Michael Elise, 60 million. I know there's a release clause in his contract. Romano mentioned it's around sort of 45-50 million, but it's not as simple as paying the fee, as you just pay the 50 and you get him. There's a couple of complications and things around it. So I think yeah, that one might be a difficult deal to do. And Crystal Palace did fleece us for Zaha and Aaron Wan-Bissaka, so I think they'd be hoping for the same. Maybe they can get a bit more out of us. Again, like Elise, I know people are worried about his injury record. He's had a couple of bad injuries this season, but I think the reason he's got re-injured in succession is because they rushed him back too quickly, much like we did with Luke Shaw. Like, I think that's what the issue is. Before that, I don't think he had that many injury issues, if I remember correctly. Somebody correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. But yeah, it's an interesting. There's two interesting signings there. But let us know in the chat. Would you sign both of them for that price, or would you sort of look at other targets? Let me know. Who else in the chat? Cobby's generational, and I've seen a few. Absolutely, mate. Darrington, this is Maguire all over again. I think that's in reference to Branthwaite. Richard Hawkins, no, I'd value him closer to 40 or 50. Yeah, I think that's about right. I definitely agree with you there. It's high price point, but it's United. That's what they do, isn't it? They just always increase the price. If they're British, if they play in the Premier League and it's United, you add about 20, 30 million on top of whatever their price is, because normally we pay it because we're absolutely shocking at negotiations normally, because we've had Ed Woodward, Richard Arnold, John Murta, who are just not football people and don't understand how it works. So if you've got any questions, guys, stick them in the chat. Football, non-football related, stick them in the chat and I'll answer them at the end. That'll be I'll do that towards the end. It's just a little quick show tonight. I just wanted to make sure you had some content to look at tonight and a bit of news updates. So this is Rich Fay, who I believe works for the MEM. He has gone with Manchester United's manager will have less influence over transfers decisions as part of the club's new strategy going forward. Ten Hag's prior recruitment power could be taken away from him if he remains in the job. While the Manchester United manager will be asked which areas of the team they would like to strengthen, the recruitment team will be tasked with creating a shortlist of candidates from which the first team coach will be asked for their preference. Ineos aim to sign players for the club rather than the manager to ensure they are future-proof to fit in, irrespective of who leads the team on a daily basis. So I think this is something we've spoken about for a long time. In the old days, obviously, you have Fergie, who had his hands over everything. Like, he was involved in everything there was, everything that he wanted to do. He was involved in recruitment, signing players, youth players, budgets, all that sort of stuff. He was involved in everything, which at that time it worked because he is the most successful manager of all time. So you could understand why he gave him that sort of power. And I think United have been hanging on to that structure forever. Every time they brought a manager in, they've gone, well, what do you want? Who do you want? What do you want to do? Rather than going, well, all these other teams setting up a transfer structure above them with a football director, recruitment director, coaches, scouts, all that sort of stuff, and they're making decisions on the transfers, and then the manager is just concentrating purely on coaching, tactics, team selection, development of players. He's just focusing on that. And I think last summer, obviously they were relying on Ten Hag quite a bit, and we're asking his advice on a lot of players and a lot of signings in the summer before as well, because clearly we didn't have this structure in place and we don't have the knowledge that we are now recruiting and getting into place, into positions on the board. We had John Murta, Richard Arnold, and previous to that, Ed Woodward, who couldn't find a way out of a wet paper bag. Like, you saw the sort of mess of transfers in the summer when they were going out and trying to sign Frankie de Jong for 12 weeks and ended up not getting him. And then they got bitch-slapped by Adrian Rabiot's mum, Veronica, demanding wages. And then we were going for Arnautovic and the fans revolted, and it was a mess, wasn't it? It was just a mess. And then we sort of panicked by, got Casemiro, who for the first season worked out. This season, he's fallen off quite a lot, hasn't he? I just think we relied too much on Ten Hag's little black book. He was like, I need to get results here. I need to keep my job. So I'm just going to bring in players that I know I've worked with and I trust. That's why Sandro's come in, who I think we can all agree has worked absolutely and has been a shrewd signing. Anthony, who absolute flop, has not worked at all. Christian Eriksen, who was a free, and he obviously worked with, I think, he was training at the Ajax Academy when he left Inter because of his heart issue. Mason Mount, who he spotted when he was playing for Vitesse, when he was managing Ajax. So it's all people he knew. Amrabat, another one, who I think 50-50. And then Onana, who at the beginning, awful, cost us the Champions League, finished last in our group, gave up so many goals that were just horrific. And then I think over the season he has turned it around, so he might turn out to be a decent buy. So yeah, I think his transfer record on his is not fantastic. Some of them, the jury's still out. Others are flops, and then there's maybe one or two that you would count as a success. So I think the way they've worded it in this article is Ineos aims to sign players for the club rather than the manager. The manager will be asked which areas of the team they would like to strengthen. The recruitment team will create a list of candidates. I've said this on the channel multiple times. I think the manager needs to be like, I want to play like you. So the way Ineos is structured it, they're going to pick the playing style and how they want United to be, and then the manager's tasked with basically following that out. So if he's tasked with following that, and he's like, I need certain types of profiles of players, like I need a fullback who's capable of this, or I need a DM who's capable of this, rather than him going, go sign me Casemiro, go sign me Frankie de Jong, go sign me Anthony. He's like, I need this type of player. Your recruitment team comes back to him and goes, right, we've got 4 players here. So the top here is the premium, ready to go signing. He comes into the team straight away and he's banging. He's off the races. However, expensive, which means you have to make adjustments in other areas price-wise. We've got this guy who's about to hit his peak, get him for a bit cheaper, but it might take a couple of seasons before he's fully off to the races. Or there's this young risk talent, a gem, who could be one of the best players that you have in the team, but he's only 18, 19, so it might not be ready for a long time, so you might have to persist and stuff. And that's the way you've got to structure your team. You can't just go out and sign 70 million, 80 million pound striker, 70, 80 million pound defender, 50, 60 million pound DM. Like, it's not going to work that way. So, and Ten Hag can't also just be like, I like this guy, I work with this guy I've seen in the Dutch league. You can't be doing that either. So you need to structure it correctly, and that's what this article seems to be saying. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to get on to a couple of other transfer stories. I'll look at the comments. Onana from Everton could be a good signing. I like him a lot. Very raw, but powerful individual. He's good on the ball. I think could be expensive. Again, I think they would ask for 70, 80 million pounds, which for a guy who's not a generational talent or not a guy who's like guaranteed to be what you need, it's a risk. Rashad, we're keeping Eric Ten Hag or no? I don't know. I don't know what's happened. Like they're doing a review this week. I assume that at some point they will announce it. But yeah, as far as I know, I've not heard anything. I'll give anything in the world to get Sir Alex to come back to managing. Yeah, in his prime, he'd be great, but let the guy retire. Let him have a life. He's fucking earned it. Onana had a good game on Saturday. He did. He's had a couple of good games, man. Like I think he's been good the second half of the season. I think he's made some important saves. Some of his distribution still needs work, but I think he's been good. I like his attitude. He's confident. He was willing to take the brunt of criticism instead of youth players, and said that to people. He said, don't put the bullets towards the youth players, give it to me because I'm willing to take it. So I like him. I like him as a character. He seems like a good lad. Have you heard anything about a story of interest in Evan Ferguson? No, I know he was linked to. We were linked to him a few years ago, but I've not heard anything since. He's been injured a lot this season, hasn't he? So that worries me. That really worries me. Because I don't need another injury-prone player at United. Like, I think that's the last thing we need. Let's have a look. I'll just get a few more stories. Again, guys, if you want to ask me any questions on football, if you want to ask me any questions on the channel, if you want to ask me any questions on music, movies, stick them in the chat and we'll rattle through them. If not, I will jump off before 7. Where's the other article? There's a bit more on Jared Branthwaite there. So here we go. So there's been a bit of focus on the medical department because that's been a bit of an issue this season. Was it 64 separate injuries? It's unheard of, absolutely unheard of. 14 different centre-back pairings. I think the only players who've been available all season without being away at a competition or being injured or suspended has been Dallo and Garnacho, I believe. I think everybody else at some point has been injured, suspended, or AFCON in Onana's case, which is just crazy. Absolutely fucking crazy. So, yeah. Joining internal conversations, Jason Wilcox, who's the new head of recruitment, has pointed to a high number of minutes that younger members of Manchester United squad have played this season. Eric Tanning is already aware and sought to ease the burden where possible. Like I've said, you've seen Garnacho played 40-odd games in a row. I think it was like 38 games in a row before he got a rest, which is insane for a 19-year-old. Like, as a 19-year-old player, you should not be playing that amount of games. You should be 2 games here, 3 games here, and then pulled out of the team to help with your development, make sure you're getting the correct amount of rest. But because he's been better than Antony, better than Rashford, and he didn't want to play Ahmad, he was just played all the time because he was doing well at the time, which is, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? He's doing well, so you want to play him, but you don't want to play him too much because his development could be possibly ruined. Same with Højlund. He came to us injured, and we played him before he was ready, so it took him a while to get up to speed, and when he did, then he got another injury, which is unfortunate. And then with Kobbie Mainoo, injured in pre-season, and he was injured for a lot of the sort of first part of the season. When he finally came back, he played like pretty much every game. I think I only remember being dropped for like a couple of games at most. So it's not good, man. Like under Fergie, players would, like 19-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds would get 2 games here, 3 games here, or they come off the bench for 30 minutes and then they won't play the next game because they just wanted to slowly bleed them in. So when you have a good squad and good squad depth, you're able to do that. You're able to sort of just give players rests here and there, rotate them out when they're not quite feeling 100%, especially with the youth players. Like, it's super important. We just don't have it. We don't have the squad depth. We've had so many injuries, so much going on off the pitch with players' personal lives who, like, name it, Ronaldo, Antony, Mason Greenwood, like Rashford. Like, it's ridiculous, like, the amount of things, and then plus the injuries on top of that. So squad depth is needed in this team. Like, we need to build a good depth of squad so we can have rotation. We can rest players. If players are overplayed, we can take them out and like give them the day off and stuff like that. So I think that's absolutely important. Final story I wanted to touch on, which was, it was late last night, I think it came out. So Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos have offered early payment as an annual bonus if staff resign by next Wednesday as part of Sir Jim Ratcliffe's edict to get all employees into the club's offices and his push to trim the workforce. So obviously he sent out a mass email saying everybody's back to the office, no more working from home, and if you don't want to do it, you can take an annual bonus and resign and you can be let go, basically. Manchester United's non-football staff were en masse invited to take redundancy in an email across the club on Tuesday afternoon. They were given 7 days to make a decision. So, yeah, he's basically streamlining everything. So anybody who doesn't want to be a part or be in the office 5 days a week, he's basically gone. You're gone. Like, you can leave. I think he's done similar cost-cutting stuff with the FA Cup final. I believe normally all staff would get paid travel and board, and I think a couple of extra tickets for staff members and for family and friends. And I think he cut all of that and they just got 1 ticket. So there's a lot of cost cutting going on. And while that may be effective in some way, I think the big issue with United has been the overspend on players. That's where all the money's been spaffed up the wall, hasn't it? Like transfer fees, wages, paying out for extensions on contracts on players who were never going to play just to retain value, which is an insane method, which obviously was a Woodward method. So I think they need to look at that. They need to get some wages off the books. And obviously they are doing that with Rafael Varane's going this summer. Casemiro possibly could go this summer. So they are doing that as well. But you had De Gea leave the previous season because he was on an absolute wedge of a wage. So it's interesting. It's interesting to see what I think. I don't know how I feel about it. I feel a bit annoyed that a billionaire who lives in Monaco as a tax exile because he doesn't want to pay tax in this country, who voted for Brexit in a country that he doesn't live in, is then demanding people come back to the office when he's not going to be there. Stinks a bit of a hypocrisy to me, but I'm not in charge of the club. He is. Let's look at the comments. De Gea was goalkeeper number 2. I can't see it, man. Like, nobody's offered him a deal this year, and he was on 375k at United. Obviously, nobody was offering him that. I think he would have took a deal, and then to come back to United as number 2, I think his pride wouldn't let him. My damned United, cutting back the Glazers bloat in every department, got to be done. Agreed. We cut their private jet fucking flights as well. Like, they flew to the FA Cup final, both of them, the women's and the men's. Carabao Cup, like, we cut all of that, because fuck those parasites. Rich Hawkins, 100%, 29 euros on 5-year contracts. Exactly. Like, I think Casemiro's got a 4-year deal and he's on 350k a week, which, again, Casemiro, first season, fantastic player, but where's the future proofing in that? Like, what do you do after that once he declines, which he has this season? You're stuck and you just got to pay him out because nobody's going to pay him that stupid amount of money because we're idiots with wages. So it definitely needs to be looked at as well. Like, you can't just be looking at staffing costs because I think that's a small ripple and a small drop in the pond compared to the player wages, the transfer fees that we're probably still paying off as well. So, yeah. The Sun, which I hate the Sun. Don't buy the Sun. It's a fucking horrific paper and run by horrific people, so don't buy it. But they had a 5 rules of the Man United era, the new Sir Jim Ratcliffe era. So take it with a pinch of salt because it's the Sun. So God knows if it's even true. Number 1 was an age limit, 25 new signings. Number 2 was no Galacticos, or no big time players. Number 3, style of play to set by technical director Jason Wilcox. Manager to be asked what position he wants to sign, not what player, which touched on before. Ineos to send a list of 3 signings per position for the manager to choose one. Again, we sort of touched on that before. So I think that's the final story, unless something's broke while I've been live. I don't think so. But yeah, guys, any questions, comments, thoughts, opinions on anything? They don't have to be football related, but yeah, just throw it down. We'll answer them before we go. We've got like 4 minutes before I have to jump off. So if you've got any questions, I will definitely answer them. There's lots about Kylian Mbappe. What is going on there? Oh, Muppeteers. So James from the Muppeteers, obviously a friend of the show, been on the channel quite a lot. Please do so go support him in his channel and his Twitter and stuff. I think we're going to have him back on in June. So yeah, look out for that. He's just put the situation the same as last week. Erik ten Hag is very likely to leave Manchester United. There is no information yet to suggest otherwise. There you go. A little bit of breaking news update there from James from the Muppeteers. I need to get him back on the channel, man. Like, it's always absolute gangbusters when he's on the channel. Really enjoy having him on. Yeah, I don't think there's anything new. So yeah, guys, any questions? If you've got no questions, then I'll jump off. But my damn United, Avi can still have his private jet back to US. Only half the cool splashed down. Yeah, I can't condone that, mate. But yeah, I understand. I fucking understand. Lucky Singh, Ten Hag in, Trevor Chalobah, Fofana, Braithwaite, Rabiot. That's what the signings he wants. Rashad, do you think Beckham will make a good manager? I don't know. I don't know if he's done his coaching badges. I don't think he's interested. Like, he's not shown any interest in management. He's not shown any interest in it. I don't know if he's done his badges. He's quite happy being the club owner at Inter Miami, and he's got the money. So why deal with stress if you've got the money? Like, unless you're absolutely obsessed by football and it's all you want to do, which I don't think he does. I think he's interested in several different things. Still has a keen interest in football, obviously, but you see, like, Wayne Rooney hasn't done great in his managerial career so far, and was doing a lot of punditry and stuff like that. And you thought, okay, maybe he's sort of looking elsewhere and stuff like that, but he's now gone straight back into management, which is interesting. I'm sure Frank Lampard would be the same. Steven Gerrard is obviously managing out in Saudi. So great players don't always make great managers, unfortunately. Like, sometimes it works. Sometimes they're great players, but not a lot of the time. Sometimes it doesn't work out, as we've seen. Chinnaswamy, Ten Hag out. We win small trophy like FA Cup, EFL, and fans want to give him a new contract. This is why Ollie get 1 year free contract. I wouldn't call the FA Cup a small trophy. I think the FA Cup is a major trophy. Oldest cup competition in the world. Like, people have their teams when they've won it have had parades and bus stop parades. So I wouldn't call it a small trophy. I understand the League Cup, like, it slightly is, but the FA Cup was one of the greatest. The FA Cup was one of the greatest days of watching United post Fergie. Like, and you can't take that away. Like, it was absolutely phenomenal, and I loved every single minute of it. And it was even sweeter that we beat City, and we did it where we outplayed them, out-tactically, out-thought them and stuff. So I wouldn't call it a small trophy. I wouldn't call it. Rashad, Rooney's now the manager for Plymouth. Yeah, just as I just touched on that. I saw that. be interested to see how he goes, because obviously he's not done well, has he? I know there was situations at Derby where he had like no money and it was an ownership thing and they owned the stadium or something like that. There was a lot of shit going on there, but Birmingham didn't go well. I don't know what happened at DC United where he was, so I'm not sure what happened there. I don't see how a company jumps up to buy a manager. I don't think they have enough experience. I think they've just ran out of people to ask. Like, they've asked so many people who've turned them down. Xabi Alonso, I think De Zerbi turned him down. Nagelsmann turned him down. Ralph Rangnick turned him down. I'm sure there's others I'm missing that definitely turned him down. So I think they've just reached a certain level. Like, these were the lists that they wanted. I think they begged Tuchel to stay after they said they wanted to let him go. So I think it's just reached this level where they're like, we have to look away from the big names now. We have to look to the next level down, and that's where a company is. Obviously, as a player, he was a great centre back and commands a certain amount of respect for what he's won and what he did in the game. But as a manager, very inexperienced, man, very inexperienced. So, and the demand at Bayern is not easy to deal with either. It's a big demand. Jay McGogan, shout out to Jay McGogan. Bayern are desperate, absolutely, mate. I want to win big trophy like La Liga and Champions League, not the FA Cup. Well, we're in the Premier League, mate, so La Liga. And the Premier League's a bigger trophy than La Liga anyway. Look at the fucking amount of money and the amount of people who watch La Liga versus who watch the Premier League. Like, come on, man. Ten Hag in, De Zerbi out. Lucky Singh, I want to win trophies every year. We all do, mate. All want to win trophies. Every single one of us. I'm going to wrap it up there unless you guys have got any sort of other questions. Go check out the news story Nick did earlier today. There's stuff I've just touched on and other stuff from early on in the day, so go check that out. If you're a member, go check out Nick's video that he dropped. I think, was it today or yesterday? Go check that video out. There's going to be another one coming also. We're going to do a show this week as well on the youth and who the next youth sort of player is to break through. Harry Amas is Shea Lacey, people like that. Me and Nick are going to do that this week, so please do check that out when it comes out. And then follow the socials: Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Real Reds Talk. On all of them you'll find us, so go find us on there. We'd appreciate it. If you're new here and you like the content, please do throw us a subscribe. We'd appreciate it. We're trying to get this channel to 10k and we're currently on 5,153, so we can only do that with your help, so we'd appreciate it if you would do that. Leave a comment on the video, any questions and stuff, stick them on there, and I reply to everything that we get commented on, even from people who are dickheads. So yeah, chuck them in and we'll answer them. And then yeah, if no other questions, I'm going to sign off. Damned United, we used to be leading FA Cup winners. Arsenal overtook us. It's now 14-13 to Arsenal. Time to flip it again next 2 seasons. Absolutely, I'm happy with that, and we'll leave it there. Richard Hawkins, Magic Talk later. See you later, mate. Have a good one. But yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. I'm sorry it was so short and I ramble a little bit, but appreciate you guys showing up in the chat. Appreciate all the support you're showing us. Comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.
We want Bezos and we want Bezos. We want Bezos and we want Bezos. We want Bezos and we want Bezos.